The mystery of how Princess Diana died has fascinated the world for more than a decade. Was she the victim of an accident or something more sinister?
It has finally happened. After decades of whispers, conspiracy theories, and unanswered questions, the FBI has just dropped a bombshell that no one saw coming. Arrest warrants have been issued for members of the British royal family in connection to the death of Princess Diana.
Diana, Princess of Wales, has in fact been killed in that car accident in Paris.
Yes, you heard that right. The case that the world thought was closed has been reopened in the most dramatic way possible. And the implications? Earth-shattering. So what new evidence did the FBI find? Who exactly are they going after? And most importantly, what does this mean for the royal family? Stay with us, because this story is about to take a turn that no one expected. The leaked documents. It started as an ordinary day. The world went about its business, unaware that history was about to change forever. Then, suddenly, breaking news. The FBI has issued arrest warrants for members of the British royal family in connection with Princess Diana's death. The world froze. The most powerful monarchy in the world may be involved in a decades-old conspiracy. News channels scrambled to confirm the reports. Social media exploded. Within minutes, the internet was flooded with discussions, theories, and one urgent question. The FBI knew something the public didn't. For years, Diana's tragic death had been dismissed as an accident. But now, the official narrative was crumbling. Something bigger was at play, and the world was about to find out. Princess Diana's death in 1997 had always felt too strange, too sudden. The official story? A tragic accident. According to reports, her driver, Henri Paul, had been intoxicated. He was speeding through the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris, trying to escape relentless paparazzi. The car crashed. Diana, Dodi Fayed, and Paul didn't survive, but from the very beginning, people had doubts. Witnesses claimed they saw a mysterious white Fiat Uno near the crash site, but it was never found. Surveillance cameras were present in the tunnel. Conveniently, they weren't not working. Some even said there was a bright flash right before the crash, as if someone wanted to blind the driver. Then, there was Diana's own fear. Months before her death, she wrote a letter. In it, she said, "My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure and serious head injury in order to make the path clear for him to remarry." It seemed like paranoia, yet it was a warning that no one took seriously. For years, whispers of conspiracy never stopped. People questioned the royal family's role in Diana's death, but with no hard evidence, the truth remained buried. Until now. Now the FBI had proof, and the world was about to learn what really happened that night in Paris. The world had always suspected that Diana's death was more than just a tragic accident, but without proof, those suspicions were dismissed as wild conspiracy theories. Then, everything changed. A shocking leak surfaced online, a series of classified FBI documents. The files, marked top secret, contained details of an ongoing investigation into Princess Diana's death. The most explosive part was the direct link between members of the British royal family and the crash. At first, people doubted their authenticity, but then independent experts analyzed the documents. They were real. The files revealed intercepted communications, internal memos, and testimonies from high-ranking intelligence officers. The evidence was damning. One document exposed a covert operation that had been planned months before Diana's death. The goal? To control her actions, to keep her from saying or doing anything that could damage the monarchy, but something went horribly wrong. Another file contained a transcript of a conversation between British intelligence officials on how to handle Diana's growing influence, leaving its true meaning open to interpretation. People demanded answers. They wanted to know who was involved, how deep the conspiracy went, why the royal family had been so desperate to silence Diana. And the biggest question of all, why was the FBI only acting after all these years? The leaks had sent shockwaves across the globe, and the pressure was mounting. The world wanted justice. The death of Princess Diana had always left wounds that never fully healed, and now, with the possibility of a deliberate cover-up emerging, those wounds were being torn open. Streets once lined with tourists and royal admirers now echoed with chants for justice. The divide was immediate. Some viewed the leaked files as long overdue proof that the official narrative had been a carefully orchestrated deception. Others hesitated, unwilling to accept that an institution as powerful as the British monarchy could be involved in such a sinister plot. The pressure mounted on Downing Street. The arrests began. British officials scrambled behind closed doors, knowing their response could decide the monarchy's fate. Silence was no longer an option. Under mounting public pressure, the government promised a full investigation, but empty reassurances no longer satisfied the furious crowds. Inside Buckingham Palace, tension was palpable. Hours after the leaked documents went viral, the palace issued a carefully worded statement. Distant, almost cold. They expressed deep sorrow, but denied any wrongdoing, dismissing the files as unverified and misleading. Assurances of cooperation did little to quell the outrage. London's streets, once filled with royal admirers, now pulsed with protesters demanding justice, transparency, and above all, the truth. Protesters held up images of Princess Diana, their voices rising in unison as they refused to let her story be buried under royal silence. Inside the palace, the tension was unbearable. The air outside Buckingham Palace had turned electric. The crowds had grown larger, their voices louder, their anger no longer just a whisper, but a force that could not be ignored. Every street leading to the palace was lined with reporters, their cameras flashing as they waited for the moment that would change history. The monarchy had been accused before, but never like this. This time, the law was moving in. When the first arrest happened, it was swift and silent. A senior royal aide was taken into custody in the early hours of the morning. There were no sirens, no dramatic confrontation, just a quiet departure in an unmarked car. But the silence did nothing to suppress the impact. The news spread within minutes, lighting up television screens and social media feeds. The royal family, once untouchable, was now within reach of justice. Then came the second arrest. This time, it was different. The world watched in stunned disbelief as a high-ranking member of the royal family was escorted from their residence by law enforcement. Their face remained expressionless, but the tension in their clenched jaw told a different story. Cameras captured every second. The firm grip of the officers, the flashing lights of police vehicles, the way onlookers gasped as history unfolded before their eyes. The reaction was immediate. Some erupted into cheers, convinced that justice was finally being served. Others stood frozen, unable to process what they were seeing. As the day unfolded, more names surfaced. More warrants were issued. The investigation was no longer just about Diana's death. It was about a system that had kept secrets for too long. The arrests were not just the result of leaked documents. They were the result of decades of unanswered questions and suppressed suspicions. Behind palace walls, fear took hold. Meetings turned frantic. Officials scrambled to contain the damage, to find a way to stop the unraveling of one of the most powerful institutions in the world. But the wheels of justice had already begun to turn, and there was no stopping them now. In the midst of the chaos, as the world struggled to make sense of what was happening, one person refused to sit back and wait for the truth to be handed to her. For the purpose of confidentiality, the journalist will be called Sandy Carter. She had spent years uncovering corruption, exposing scandals, and following trails that others ignored. But this was different. This was bigger than anything she had ever investigated before. Sandy had always believed that there was more to Princess Diana's death than what the official reports claimed. Sandy had spent years chasing the truth, only to hit dead ends. Now, with the monarchy under investigation, the doors were finally opening. She combed through the leaked documents, names, dates, missing evidence. Witness statements dismissed, reports vanished, warnings ignored. Some sources stayed silent, others risked everything to speak. A pattern emerged. Diana had feared for her life. Secret meetings, last phone calls, intelligence operatives never questioned. The crash wasn't just tragic, it looked deliberate. Speculation wasn't enough. The hidden motives. The final pieces of the puzzle were out there, and Sandy was going to find them. Sandy's phone buzzed with an anonymous message. The sender arranged a meeting, and Sandy was curious. The meeting took place in a dim parking garage, where a former MI6 agent confirmed her worst fears. Diana had become a threat. Her independence, influence, and relationship with Dodi Fayed had unsettled powerful figures. The crash had been orchestrated with precision. The tunnel was chosen, the flash of light deliberate, the response delayed. As Sandy processed the revelation, she understood the unspoken warning. Pursuing this truth meant stepping into dangerous territory. The pieces were falling into place, and with every new revelation, the picture became clearer. Diana's death had not been a tragic accident, nor was it a simple act of reckless driving. It was a carefully orchestrated event, one driven by motives far deeper than the world had ever suspected. Sandy pored over the whistleblower's words, cross-referencing them with every document, every interview, every scrap of evidence she had gathered. A pattern emerged, one that led directly to the highest circles of power. Diana had not just been a thorn in the side of the monarchy, she had been a threat to its very foundation. Her relationship with Dodi Fayed had been the tipping point. An Egyptian-born businessman, the son of billionaire Mohammed Al-Fayed, Dodi represented everything the establishment feared. His family was powerful, wealthy, and, most importantly, not British. The idea of Diana, the mother of a future king, marrying a man outside the traditional aristocracy was unsettling to those who still clung to outdated notions of bloodlines and legacy. The whispers had begun the moment the relationship became public. Diana had spent the summer before her death vacationing with Dodi, and speculation ran wild. There were rumors of an engagement, talks of a future together. Some even claimed Diana was pregnant, a theory that, if true, would have sent shockwaves through the monarchy. Sandy traced back reports from that time. Interviews with palace insiders, media leaks, even old tabloid stories that had been dismissed as gossip. There was a common theme. Diana was slipping further and further away from the control of the royal family. She was forging her own path, making decisions that defied tradition. Diana's humanitarian work had given her a global platform.
Everyone needs to be valued. Everyone has the potential to give something back.
She had stepped beyond the role of a royal figurehead, becoming an activist, a voice for the unheard. Her campaign against landmines had made her enemies in powerful places, and her growing influence threatened to overshadow the monarchy itself. There had been discussions, concerns raised about Diana's increasing unpredictability. If she married Dodi, if she had a child with him, it could shift the entire narrative of the royal family. The future King of England would have a stepfather who was not just an outsider, but a man with deep financial and political ties to foreign entities. The implications were too great, the risks too high, and so a decision had been made. Diana had to be stopped. In the days following Diana's death, the world was fed a simple explanation. A tragic accident, caused by an intoxicated driver and relentless paparazzi. The official narrative was repeated across headlines and drilled into the public consciousness. But behind the scenes, a different story was unfolding, one carefully crafted to bury the truth. More professionals have sifted through old reports, piecing together the moments immediately after the crash. The inconsistencies were glaring. The ambulance had taken an inexplicably long time to transport Diana to the hospital, despite the crash occurring minutes away from one of the best medical centers in Paris. Witnesses claimed they had seen strange activity at the crash site. Figures in unmarked vehicles, people giving orders before the police even arrived. The world watched as history unfolded in real time. The royal family, long seen as untouchable, was now at the center of one of the most shocking legal battles in modern history. Diana was laid to rest at her family's estate, Althorpe, in Northamptonshire, England. Her grave is located on a small island in the middle of a lake. Her family wanted this place to be a peaceful resting place, away from the public eye. Even though Diana was no longer with them, her legacy lived on. Her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, have continued her charitable work in many ways, carrying on the causes that were important to their mother. Princess Diana's death was a tragic and sudden event that changed many lives. It showed the dangers of the intense media attention that surrounded her life, as well as the impact she had on so many people. Even today, many years later, people still remember Princess Diana with love and respect. Since her death, there have been tons of rumors of what really happened in that tunnel, but none of these rumors were confirmed. This meant that nobody knew what exactly happened that fateful night. Well, that is until recently when Diana's butler himself, Paul Burrell, came out with some truths about the princess's private life. But what exactly did Paul have to say? Let's find out. Conspiracy theories about Diana's death and Paul's shocking revelations. After Princess Diana died, at first, the crash was seen as a tragic accident caused by the driver, who had been drinking, and the paparazzi who were chasing the car. But over time, some people began to believe that there might be more to the story. They wondered if the crash had been planned on purpose, and some even thought that people in powerful positions, possibly connected to the royal family, might have been involved. One of the reasons that these conspiracy theories started was because of a letter that was written by Princess Diana herself. This letter, which became very famous later on, was written by Diana in 1995, about 2 years before her death.
The bombshell letter is said to have been written by Princess Diana herself just 2 years before her tragic death.
Diana alleged that her husband, Prince Charles, was planning to stage a car crash.
In the letter, Diana expressed her fears that something bad might happen to her. She wrote that she believed that there were people who wanted to get rid of her, and she even mentioned that she thought they might try to cause her to have a car accident. When this letter became public, many people were very shocked. They began to wonder if Diana's death had been more than just an accident. Despite these rumors, the official investigations into Diana's death concluded that the crash was just a tragic accident. The first investigation was conducted by the French authorities. They looked into what happened that night and found that the driver of the car, Henri Paul, had been drinking alcohol and was driving too fast. They also noted that the paparazzi were chasing the car, which put pressure on Henri Paul to drive even faster. The French investigation concluded that these factors led to the crash and that it was not planned. But the conspiracy theories did not go away. In fact, they seemed to grow stronger over time. Many people were not satisfied with the explanation that the crash was an accident. They continued to believe that there might have been more to the story. In response to these concerns, another investigation was launched in the United Kingdom. This investigation was called Operation Paget. It was led by the British police, and it looked into all the different conspiracy theories that had been circulating since Diana's death. Operation Paget began in 2004, about 7 years after the crash.
The probe was launched by the British Metropolitan Police in 2004 as part of the investigation into the various conspiracy theories surrounding Diana's death in 1997.
The investigation was very thorough and took several years to complete. The goal of Operation Paget was to determine whether there was any truth to the conspiracy theories, or if the crash had truly been an accident. As part of the investigation, the police looked at all the evidence, including Diana's letter, the events leading up to the crash, and the actions of everyone involved. In 2006, the findings of Operation Paget were released. The investigation concluded that there was no evidence to support the conspiracy theories. Like the French investigation, Operation Paget found that the crash was caused by the driver, Henri Paul, who had been drinking and was driving too fast. The report also mentioned the role of the paparazzi, who were chasing the car and making the situation even more dangerous. Operation Paget did not find any evidence of a plan to murder Princess Diana, and it stated that the crash was a tragic accident. Despite the conclusions of Operation Paget, some people continued to believe in the conspiracy theories. They pointed to Diana's letter as evidence that she knew something bad was going to happen to her. They also raised questions about other aspects of the crash, such as the actions of the French authorities and the response of the emergency services. For example, some people wondered why it took so long for Diana to be taken to the hospital after the crash. Others questioned the role of the British intelligence services and whether they might have been involved in some way. That's where Diana's butler, Paul Burrell, came in. Princess Diana's life was always in the spotlight, but there were many things about her that the public didn't know. After her tragic death in 1997, more details about her private life started to come out. One of the people who shared many of these details was her former butler, Paul Burrell. He worked for Diana for many years and was very close to her. His revelations about her private life surprised many people and gave a deeper understanding of who Diana was behind the scenes. These stories also showed the challenges she faced and the kind of person she was when she was not in front of the cameras. Paul Burrell began working for the royal family in the 1980s. At first, he worked for Queen Elizabeth II, but later, in 1987, he started working for Princess Diana. He became one of her closest and most trusted staff members. Diana once called him her rock, which showed how much she relied on him. Paul saw many of the private moments in Diana's life, and he was there for her during some of her most difficult times. He was by her side as she navigated her marriage, her role as a mother, and her very public life. One of the key revelations Paul made about Diana's private life was about how lonely she often felt. Even though Diana was one of the most famous women in the world, she sometimes felt isolated and alone. Paul talked about how Diana would often confide in him about her feelings of sadness and loneliness. She felt that she couldn't always trust the people around her, and this made her life very difficult. He also revealed that this loneliness somehow managed to make her develop an eating disorder called bulimia. Diana's struggles were not just about her personal relationships, but also about the pressures of living such a public life. Things don't end there. Another major aspect of Diana's private life that Paul Burrell revealed was her struggle with her marriage to Prince Charles. Diana and Charles got married in 1981, and their wedding was watched by millions of people around the world.
It's 34 years now since a young woman called Diana Spencer married her prince. It was a day of memorable images, of a young couple emerging as man and wife from St. Paul's Cathedral.
However, behind the scenes, their marriage was not as perfect as it seemed. Paul shared details about how difficult things were for Diana in her marriage. She knew that Prince Charles had a close relationship with another woman, Camilla Parker Bowles, and this caused her a lot of pain. Diana once famously said in an interview that there were 3 of us in this marriage, referring to Charles, Camilla, and herself. Paul's revelations gave even more insight into how deeply this situation affected Diana. Diana's battle with mental health issues was another part of her private life that Paul spoke about. Diana struggled with bulimia, a serious eating disorder, for many years. This was something that she had to deal with in secret, even while carrying out her royal duties and maintaining her public image. Paul shared how Diana would sometimes use food as a way to cope with the stress and pressure of her life. She also had periods of deep sadness, and at times, she felt overwhelmed by everything that was happening around her. Paul's stories highlighted the emotional difficulties Diana faced, even though she always tried to put on a brave face for the public. Despite these struggles, Paul also talked about how much Diana cared about other people. She had a deep sense of compassion and empathy, and she was always looking for ways to help those who were less fortunate. Paul shared stories about how Diana would go out of her way to visit people who were sick or in need. She often did these things without any cameras or publicity because she genuinely wanted to make a difference. One of the most famous examples of this was when Diana visited patients with HIV and AIDS. during a time when there was a lot of fear and stigma surrounding the disease. Paul revealed that these visits were not just for show. Diana truly cared about the people she was helping, and she wanted to show them that they were not alone. Apart from her compassion, Paul also spoke about Diana's strength and determination. Even though she faced many challenges, she was always determined to stand up for herself and for what she believed in. Paul shared how Diana worked hard to create her own path, especially after her separation from Prince Charles. She wanted to be her own person and to have her own voice, even within the constraints of the royal family. This was not always easy, but Diana was determined to make a difference in the world. Paul admired this quality in her, and he often spoke about how strong she was, even when things were very tough.
She was so iconic and so incredible and such a beautiful spirit. I still look towards that, even today.
Diana's role as a mother was another important part of her private life that Paul shared. Diana had 2 sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, and she was very dedicated to them. Paul talked about how much Diana loved her sons, and how she always tried to protect them from the pressures of royal life. She wanted them to have as normal a childhood as possible, despite the fact that they were growing up in the public eye. Diana took her role as a mother very seriously, and Paul shared many stories about the lengths she would go to in order to spend time with her boys and make sure they were happy. One of the most touching stories Paul shared was about how Diana would sneak out of the palace to spend time with her sons. Even though she had a very busy schedule and was constantly in the public eye, Diana always made time for William and Harry. Paul would help her plan secret trips so that she could take them out for a day without being followed by the press. These moments were very special to Diana, and they showed how much she valued her role as a mother above everything else. After Diana's death in 1997, Paul Burrell wrote a book called A Royal Duty, in which he shared many of these stories about her private life. The book caused a lot of controversy when it was released in 2003. Some people felt that Paul should not have shared such personal details about Diana, while others appreciated the insight it provided into who she really was. Paul defended his decision to write the book by saying that he wanted people to know the truth about Diana's life and the challenges she faced. He believed that by sharing these stories, he was honoring her memory and helping people understand the real person behind the public image. In the book, Paul also shared details about the time after Diana's death. He talked about how difficult it was for him to cope with the loss of someone he had been so close to. He also shared how he felt that he had a responsibility to protect Diana's memory and ensure that the truth about her life was not forgotten. Paul's revelations gave the world a deeper understanding of the woman who was often called the people's princess. His stories showed that even though Diana was a global icon, she was also a human being who faced many of the same struggles as everyone else. Paul's decision to speak out about Diana's private life also showed the complicated relationship between the royal family and the people who worked for them. After the book was published, there was a lot of debate about whether Paul had betrayed Diana's trust by sharing these details. Some members of the royal family were not happy with the book, and there were even legal issues surrounding some of the things Paul had revealed. However, Paul insisted that he had written the book out of love and respect for Diana, and that he wanted to make sure her true story was told. Despite his good intentions, not everyone received Paul's revelations very well. Why is this the case? And what was the exact problem the public had with Paul breaking his silence? Let's get into it. How Paul's revelations affected Diana's legacy. Paul Burrell's decision to share details about Princess Diana's life and death caused a lot of talk among the public and the media. Paul was more than just a butler. He was someone very close to Diana. He spent years with her and saw many parts of her life up close. Because of this, many people believed that what he had to say was important and truthful. Some people thought Paul was being honest, and they appreciated his stories. And now, what's next? What do you think about the death of Princess Diana? Do you think the royal family had something to do with it? Let us know in the comment section. We hope you enjoyed watching this video. Remember to like, share it, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.